join internationally acclaimed overland expert Paul Marsh and award-winning journalist Gregory Simpson as they delve into all things responsible overlanding. From choosing the right vehicle, getting yourself prepared, getting your vehicle prepared, safety tips, and much, much more. Only on Responsible Overlanding. Paul Marsh back here in the workshop. What do you got for us today?
Good morning. It's a nice cool day here in Cape Town. So I really wanted to talk about the choice of vehicles, because that I think comes up so often. People are trying to decide, what vehicle do I choose for my trip? And a lot of vehicles can work. There's no one right vehicle. There's always going to be a compromise on the vehicle you choose and how you're going to make it fit for your trip, and what is your trip and what does it entail. So when people come to me and say, well, I have to have this vehicle, I like to think big picture. What could they do with their vehicle? Where might they want to go? And then come back into what's going to suit you right now. So we've actually fortunately got the three sort of big vehicles. We've got the Land Cruiser. This is the 79 double cab. So this vehicle has served the overland industry very, very well. And what it does do, it gives enough space for 4 people, preferably 2 adults and some children, because 4 adults in any vehicle is quite a push. So it's a family type of vehicle. And then what you've got at the back, you've got a canopy with access on both sides and the rear. And that's the key thing. You've got a lot of storage space at the back. You've got a rooftop tent on the top. So putting any type of tent on top of the vehicle is literally taking away bulk that you would have to carry somewhere. So if you were carrying a ground tent, you'd be carrying maybe just mattresses, or maybe you carry stretchers and mattresses. They all have to go somewhere. So invariably people go for a roof tent option for that as one reason. And the second reason, it's nice to be up there. It's a bit cooler off the ground. It's certainly a lot safer if you're worried about animals.
That's a big question. Is it safer being on the roof?
Well, you know, it depends how you look at safety. I think if you're up on the roof, the fact that you're off the ground gives people that element of safety from animals. You know, animals are a big thing for people. They always worry about, what if the lions come? And you're actually very safe in a ground tent as long as it's zip closed. How would you look at this vehicle if you're going to choose it for yourself, and what would the criteria be? So I look at a vehicle like this and I go, you know what, I'm looking for space because I'm taking 4 people. Or if you built this vehicle for 2, you've got access to the back doors. So access is probably the key thing. In any vehicle that I build, I've always felt that if you can get to your equipment, you're going to use it. And there's nothing worse than trying to unpack a lot of stuff to get to something you really need. So on a truck like this, you've got 2 extra doors, and you've got 3 canopy doors. The door at the back and 2 side canopy doors. So you can actually, for 2 people, lay a truck out like this exceptionally well and access everything. So big consideration. You've got a lot of options. The choice you've got is these trucks are quite difficult to get hold of second hand. They're not cheap, so they command a much higher price in the market. So you've got to look at that as an option as well. So when you're balancing our criteria of what I want to spend on my truck, what's going to suit me, there's always going to be the ultimate nice to have, and it comes with a price. And I think that's what we try and balance out. You know, you can throw a lot of money at a vehicle, but you also need money to travel. And I think I find that very important when I'm working with my clients, to try and understand the balance there. And some people, you know, you want to make sure that you get that balance right. And if this truck is out of your reach, then look at another option. So let's have a look at another option.
So should 2/3 of your budget be for the building, at least 1/3 for actually getting out there and doing the business?
It depends how long you're going for. You know, sometimes you're going to find the longer you go, you're going to need more money. So you know, that's a very difficult question to make. What I normally would say to people is, work on your rate per day that you're going to spend on fuel and camping and that, and then work that how long you want to travel for, and then come back and go, well, that's the budget I've got. Now, you can't compromise when it comes to building a vehicle, especially when it comes to the reliability side. You can compromise on the kit. You could do it without a roof tent. You could take a ground tent. It's much cheaper. Nothing wrong with that. So when it comes to looking at what you can afford and how you're going to prepare it, the key thing is not to compromise on the safety and the reliability. Those are the 2 key values that I won't compromise on. And by doing that, you can say, well, how can I actually live in and around the vehicle? What kit could I take that's less? Take less kit, more knowledge, Take equipment that you could maybe make do with. So maybe it's a second-hand bit of kit, maybe it's not a roof tent, maybe it's a ground tent. You're still going to get out into nature. It's just going to be slightly different.
And
Nothing wrong.
V8 versus the straight six on this truck.
So the V8s are fantastically good motors. My preference is not to take them really far out deep into Africa, and the reason being is that there's less opportunity to fix them with workshops. That they don't see a lot of V8s up north, not as many as we do down here. It's got a lot more electronics, and of course the fuel does become a problem. If you run bad fuel through the more modern motor, when people have mixed it with paraffin, or you've got a dose of water through the fuels into your fuel tank, and that happens, and it happens more in Africa than it does in other parts of the world, because a lot of the tanks are quite old, and you can mitigate that in a big way. You can actually take a funnel, and a Raycor funnel, which has got a water separator in it, and you can put your fuel through a funnel. It takes longer, it's a bit of a pain, but that will help you reduce the problems of getting contaminated fuel. So I prefer, when people are going north, to go for a very simple straight six diesel, and that way you're going a little bit slower, but you've got that simplicity back in them.
And more forgiveness of the engine for bad fuel.
Yeah, bad fuel, and I think bad fuel we know is a challenge, and if there's something that can really destroy your trip and hamper your progress, is go and pick up a fill of bad fuel and see what you've got to do to fix it.
And like the fuel doctor, you see the sort of conditioners for the fuel to break it up. Are those have any good?
Look, they do. Some of them are better than others. So absolutely, I often say to carry something if you had water through your system, but you're not going to get rid of a tank full, contaminated with water. And when you're going to go further north, you really want to deal with the problem properly. You don't want to go and pour something in the tank and let's just hope that it actually fixes it, because it may not, and then you could be further away and in more trouble with less help. So I'm much more, if you've got that sort of problem, stop, deal with it properly. So if it means you've got to drain your tank, then drain your tank. Get clean fuel, clean the tank out. Make sure you understand what's causing the problem. More often than not, people fix the damage, and they don't go back to the cause. What actually caused it? I've got a blocked fuel filter, and they'll change the fuel filter, and that's what's been damaged. Okay, so what is the cause? The cause, I've got a tank full of bad fuel. Okay, so it's just going to happen again.
Exactly.
So really, it is about understanding what's causing it. If the breather, if you get a lot of mud up on behind you, on the actual fuel tank breathers, that can also happen. And you'll find the car's not driving properly, and you'll find it's actually a simple fix. The fuel tank breather's a bit blocked up. But those are understanding what are the problems, and go back to the root cause of that, and then deal with that. Then you're actually safe to travel further.
And the 300mm extension on this, is that something you do for your clients?
We don't do a lot of that in this country. It's very well set up in Australia, and Andrew's highlighted it exceptionally well in his videos. And I must say, it's a great setup. I mean, what a treat. I'm looking forward to seeing that truck built and how it all performs. The extra extension, moving the wheels back, will absolutely make this truck better as far as it carries weight. We've always said these double cabs tend to carry the weight at the back of it, and if you could get rid of the weight of the two spare wheels and move them to behind the cab, I think you'd have a great solution to moving a lot of weight further forward. Because ideally, when you're building a vehicle up, you're trying to get your weight between the axles as low down as possible. So every thought when you lay out a vehicle is, how can I get this weight low down? Low down means I've got a much better center of gravity. It keeps me better on the road. Any weight on the roof is always going to, change your center of gravity, and you've got to be aware of that. You've got to compensate for that with suspension improvements, and you've got to also look at how you drive the vehicle.
Slower driving.
Yes, slower driving for sure.
It's bad enough coming off the road.
So we've got this amazing double cab. This is a V8. It's a great truck. Here's another. So this model's a 76 series. So almost identical in a sense that the body shape is very similar, but the setup inside at the back is a lot smaller. So this is, as you'd say, a complete like station wagon. So what we did exactly in this vehicle, you've got the space for 4 people. In this particular one, we built it for 2 people. We've taken out the rear seat. We've actually used that for storage space. We've put a load guard behind the rear seat so that the rear area is separate, much like you'd have the canopy, except you don't have as much storage space. So, do you need the space of the double cab? It's nice to have, But if you can't fit everything in a vehicle like this, you're taking too much kit. So, for 2 people in a truck like this, fantastic. If you said to me, I've got 4 people in a truck like this, I'd say you're going to be tight on space. Then you might not take a roof tent. You might need that space for bulky sort of storage. So again, great truck. They drive beautifully. You can find them. They are out there. Normally the 4.2 diesel. I haven't seen any. Well, you do get them in a V8 as well. But again, would this truck suit your needs? Absolutely. Could you make it work? Of course you could. Again, if I had to say what's more popular, the double cab's more popular, and it's reflected in the price when you're buying them second hand. So
and payload, is it obviously based
it's
on the same frame?
It's going to be different from the double cab.
Yeah.
It carries the weight better. In a sense, there's kind of like less of a load. Again, it depends how you load the vehicle. If you take your middle seat out, you can get that weight forward. You can get the fridge. You can get water storage. So what you're using at the back of the vehicle is really lightweight gear. Like your kitchen, it's lightweight, accessible gear. Chairs, table, food, cooking stuff. On these, you've got the 2 doors that open up at the back. That's very nice. It's a nice feature.
You must see the incorrect packing all the time with the car sort of leaning back and whatnot.
There isn't a perfect way to pack. I think the criteria that I would always say to people is you need to tie stuff down. Anything loose in a car is either going to get damaged or it's a liability of, hurting someone in an accident. If you roll a car, think of what flies around a car if you roll a car. And I think going back to that, you've always got to consider that if things have got their place and if everything can have its place. So it takes a few trips to sort your truck out. But generally when you go out on your truck or on your trips and you say, I'm going to do my couple of test trips, 2 or 3 test trips in the vehicle, I'm going to get to understand my vehicle, I'm going to work out where I want to put stuff. Then the little things become really easy. Here's my tire gauge, here's my wheel spanner, and we've got it all sorted. This truck has driven all the way up through Africa, all the way through to Pakistan, and driven all the way back. So it's come back looking really good. And it's a friend of mine, and he and his wife have left it here. They're living overseas, and honestly, it's really done well. I can't knock this truck. It's a 4.2 straight 6-cylinder, and he drove it carefully. Is it ideal with all this bulk? No, it's not ideal. Because you've got a lot of bulk and weight out there. So you do need to keep really light stuff up there. Ideally, could you get away without having that box? Well, I would definitely aim to do that because I think, that's a lot of extra bulk and weight. By using this type of roof tent, the fold-out roof tent, you are giving yourself more space on the roof rack. So there's always the compromise. Do I put a full roof tent that takes up the full roof, the clamshell type, okay? Or do I put the fold-out type? Now the fold-out type really, really does work. It's been around for years. They've been made, and a good number of manufacturers make them. And the early days, the innovation, and a lot of it was done by Easy On, who really have, over the years, perfected making these tents. And now a lot of other companies are making equally really good tents. I still prefer the clamshell type because I feel that when you come to camping at night, maybe as you get older you get more lazy. 2 clips, the tent pops up, and you actually don't have to worry. You can climb into your tent and go to sleep. But you've got to watch the weight you put on the roof. I think any amount of weight on the roof does critically, change the center of gravity, and that does compromise safety for sure.
And durability of the 2 different options?
A lot hinges on the roof racks and how the roof racks are fitted to the vehicles. Okay, and I think the weak point on any roof rack is the clamps, and that they it's not that the clamps are bad, people just don't monitor and check them. So one of the checks that we have is check your roof clamps, because roof clamps come loose, and then of course there's a bit of movement, and yeah, we've had it where people have hit something and the rack has slid off onto the bonnet because they didn't check the roof racks. And I prefer a rack with more feet on it, because I feel that if a rack has got more feet, it actually allows, it's like gripping with lots of hands. Each one individually is clamped to the roof. I'm not a fan of an aluminium strip going in the gutter, because if one clamp works loose, then the resonance vibration moves through along there and it can actually loosen the rest. So I prefer, and have found from experience, that clamps stay tighter when they're individually tightened. And important that you, again, maintenance, maintenance is critical.